What's up, guys? We are finally going to get some parts on the truck today. I've had a lot of these parts sitting in the garage for several weeks now while kind of had to hash out some issues with some warranty work on the truck. So before I started throwing some parts at it, wanted to get those things fixed first. But now that we're all good to go, we're going to do our first mods to the truck today. So this is my 2019 Gen 2 Raptor. It's all completely stock as of right now. Back on Memorial Day, I ordered a bunch of parts on sale, and we are going to tackle the first project to get this truck on the stage 2 setup. So the first things that we need to do to get there is this is a CVF intercooler, and I also this is the TIT 21521-SV, and we are going to do a Turbosmart blow-off valve. This is the stock location, just the OEM replacement intercooler. I don't want to get too crazy with this truck to need a high mount intercooler, so we're just going to stick with this stock replacement one for now. Yeah, so let's jump in here. I'll get this guy unboxed and we can see what's in the box. This is the standard silver intercooler, or yeah, I think this is just the silver is what I ordered. We got a little screw here. And that's all that's in that box, is essentially just the intercooler and this screw that's taped to the back here. The other thing we're doing is the Turbosmart blow-off valve here. It's the TS 0225-1001. So I know they make several different versions of these, but this is the one that's just like an OEM replacement. And this one vents to atmosphere. Yeah, so this is a V-port EM. And you can see here, this is specific to this, to F-150s and the Raptor. It's got the grooves here in the bottom and the O-ring that's going to go right on the new intercooler. This is the mounting bracket for this once you get it on the intercooler, and then it's got a plug, and I'll show you what this is for once we get the stock intercooler out. There's a hose that we're going to block off with this plug here. So that's everything in the box. Let's take a quick look here at the intercooler. This thing is pretty heavy. I'm sure it's going to be a lot heavier than stock, but I went with CVF. I've had several other platforms, cars. I had a Focus ST, I got a Fiesta ST. Ran CVF parts on my old Focus ST and worked great. So the lifetime warranty is a big help. Let's take a quick look here. And this, yeah, this is nice. All right, so first things first, we are going to remove the stock intercooler. I've got the truck up on some ramps. The skid plates are already off the truck, so I was diagnosing a clunking noise that I had in the front end. So the front 3 skid plates are already off, so that will need to be done. It's mostly 15s and 13s. But this is what it looks like with the intercooler with the lower skid plate off. So this is what we're going to be removing here. This is the lower retaining plate here. You can see the intercoolers right here. Factory hoses here. We're gonna retain all that, at least for right now. There's not really much gain to changing those. Here's the fans. So these are the intercooler fans. And then here's this pipe is what has to be plugged with that plug that I showed you guys before in that intercooler, or sorry, in the blow-off valve kit. So we are gonna start by removing these bolts here. There's one here, one here. Let's go ahead and get those zapped off here. These are 15mm sockets. Jeez, 15mm bolts, I should say. I'm also gonna go ahead and unplug or undo the connector here on the intercooler fans. These intercooler mounts, the stock ones, these are gonna transfer over to the CVF. So once we get this out, we'll move those over. I'm gonna go grab my tool to remove these clips. Got my Christmas tree tools here. So this connector here was clipped in here. I got that removed, but there's another one right there. And there's another one right here. So these two are gonna come off. We'll unplug this guy. And the intercooler fans should be good to come out. That's out. So what I did was I just kind of wedged my screwdriver in the top of here and pushed down on this clip here, and that popped it right out. Here's the intercooler fans. All right, so now we've got these two clamps here. So it's just looks like an 8. And then on this side, we've got an 8 up here as well. And then we've got these push clips. One more quick thing I want to show you guys is I've seen a lot of videos talk about, you know, when you go to a bigger replacement intercooler, this is the shroud that you got to trim. And although there's a big gap down here, you know, there's a good, I don't know, at least an inch gap at the bottom. The top is actually up there is where it gets tighter. So there's about an inch gap here, much smaller gap up here. So up here is where you actually run into space constraints. So when we get the intercooler off, we're actually going to pull off this entire shroud, and we're going to trim a little bit of it right in here so we can leave some of this when we get the bigger intercooler in there. All right, on this side here, we're simply just gonna, all you gotta do, put a screwdriver in right here, lightly, I mean very lightly pry out, like minimal effort. And we can pop this guy out. So we're gonna move this guy. And kind of push it to the rear of the truck, get it out of the grooves that kind of lock it in. All right, so we're gonna remove this here next off of, this is the recirc valve. This is what the blow-off valve is gonna replace. So this is essentially the OEM. It bleeds off boost pressure back into, this is probably going up to the intake, but all this right here is just a simple quarter turn and it comes right off. So I just kind of rotated it, turned it counterclockwise, and there it comes right off. And this is what we're going to plug with that plug that we have back from the Turbosmart kit. All right, so now that that's done, this hose clamp up here is actually a 7. So we're gonna go ahead and pull that guy off. Okay, I got this clamp off here. I'm actually gonna leave this on here for right now because I can already tell that I'm gonna be able to get the intercooler out with that still on there. We're gonna go ahead and zip these guys off. I'm gonna do both sides just because I feel like it makes it easier that way. The other thing I'm gonna do too is when I put these back on, I'm gonna orient these hose clamps so that they're in a better position. I'm gonna do this one first so I can get better access to that back one there. Okay, that's a terrible spot for that clamp. Now, I got a plug here. Let's shove this back up here actually. So I've got a plug right here for the recirc valve. Let me go ahead and get that undone. All right, there's some Christmas tree clamps up here that have to come off. Do that now. Thankfully this intercooler doesn't weigh very much. All right, got that harness loose, and there is the factory intercooler. While we're still down here, got my hand off, we are going to go ahead and remove the intercooler shroud. So let's do that next. So what I'm going to end up doing instead is I'm just going to remove this entire shroud entirely instead of cutting it up. So it's kind of a pain to do, but there are little feet down here, little nubs down here, but there's also like a lipped piece in here that is holding this in. Yeah, and once you kind of get this, the bottom and sides off, you can see here, it actually comes right off. I reach up behind and grab those off. There it is. So we're gonna, I think, as long as we can make this fit, gonna leave this here and see if we can get the intercooler up and in there. So we are gonna end up removing this guy from the truck here, so to trim this up, because up here at the top is where we've got to do about a 1/2 inch of trimming in order to get the intercooler, the tops into these points up here. So there's a 8mm bolt here, there's one here, down here at the bottom, and then same thing on the other side. And then there, you can see kind of up here, see this harness? This harness is for the fans and the recirc valve plug. So this piece up here just moves up, but what's fun is that harness is pushed in with Christmas tree clips back up here. So once we get these 4 8mm bolts out, I'll show you what we're doing next. I know probably most people thought this, as well as me when I first got started on this project, was that, you know, there was no way I was going to leave the intercooler shutters out, that I was just going to modify that to just to trim it up so that I could get the bigger intercooler here to fit. The problem with that is that this thing is an absolute pain to get in and out. I haven't seen a lot of people talk about that, but these bolts down here towards the bottom that went through here were tough to get because they go in through the back side of this. These on top were literally pretty much, I don't want to say impossible, but way more difficult to try and get out with the bumper on the truck. So I went ahead and pulled the bumper off. It's actually super easy, and it allowed me access to these bolt holes up here to the top, which is where that intercooler shutters mounted up. So I am going to actually go ahead and run the intercooler without the shutters entirely. That way, I don't have to cut up that stock piece if I ever want to go back to stock. Here's the other half of it here. Get these fans out of the way. We are going to run the fans still, I think. Here's the recirc harness. But this is going to stay with this piece. So I'm going to put that guy back on, and that'll go into storage with the rest of the stuff. So intercooler's out. I went ahead and actually did the 170 degree thermostat as well, as it's really easy to get to when the bumper's off here. I actually did a lot of it up top, but we're going to go ahead and get started on the intercooler, and I'm going to begin swapping over all the bump stops, or these parts here onto the new intercooler, as well as the new blow-off valve. So swapping everything over to the new intercooler. Really the only things that we're going to use off of the old intercooler are these pieces up top here. So we're just going to pull this guy off, I think. Okay, that is all we need with the stock intercooler. Now what we need to do is, I don't know if you remember that bolt that came with the intercooler, but the stock diverter valve has a bolt that holds it in right here. I'm going to need to take that piece off No, maybe I don't. This is a coarse thread bolt. The intercooler here is a fine thread. So I'm going to jump in here. Here's that bolt here. So what I'm going to do is here's the valve here. I'm actually going to put a light coating of some silicone spray on here. I'm going to use this PB Blaster silicone spray. Spread that guy around. Okay, let me show this to you guys real quick. You can see there's a kind of a slot on each side here, and then there's a groove cut out. So when you twist this into place, the slots are gonna fit up into here, the slots on the actual intercooler. Let me show you guys that. So if you look down in this hole, see there's a slot, there's a little piece right there and a piece right there. That's gonna match up to these holes. So let's go ahead and spin this guy on here. Now I want this to orient also so that the bracket can mount to these holes as well. So I'm going to orient it this way here. Let's try this. And then, oh, it only wants to turn that way. Okay, so it only wants to turn clockwise. So I'm going to pull this back out. I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees. Drop it back in. Rotate it there. Because I really want my harness pointing this way. As well as, you can see here, on the blow-off valve, this port right here. All right? There. This guy right there. That's going to go into this bracket, and it's going to be this 90-degree bracket. So that's going to go right there, just like so. We're going to use there's 2 bolts here that come with this blow-off valve kit. You got a long and a short. So this bracket mounts like this. The long one's going to go on the intercooler side, like so. And then the small one is going to go on the blow-off valve side. This bolt here that came with the Turbosmart intercooler, sorry, the CVF intercooler, that is if you're going to retain the factory recirc valve, because if the stock valve was here, this will go there. The Turbosmart kit comes with the hardware for both this mounting bracket, so we don't need to use that. So it's just going to be these 2 screws here that I have loosely in place, and let's tighten these down. Okay, so this bolt is a 4mm Allen. That's tightening way before, but I don't know if that's because the threads are boogered up on the intercooler, or if this is just a different screw. I think what I'm going to end up doing is actually just use the bolt that came with the intercooler. Let's see how this does instead. Yeah. Okay, so this Allen head on the bracket on the valve is a 3. That nice and snug. And then that looks like an 8 or a 10. This is a 10. We're going to go ahead and tighten this guy down. You can see here, that's nice and snug down. And the blow-off valve is secured to the intercooler. We're going to go ahead and pop this guy into the truck, but first, let's take the valve, the recirc plug, and get this installed on the truck. So right there, this guy here is our factory recirc hose. So you're going to take this end here. You can kind of see this groove here. It goes this way. So we're going to slide that in till it pops in, and we're going to turn the grate clamp, although I guess the grate clamp turns just to release. Yeah, okay, that's what it is. Yeah, see, when you turn it, those retract in. So when we have this, let me see if you guys can see that better. See these, where am I at here? See these little gray tabs protruding into the tube? So when you rotate this clockwise, you can see they go back in, and that's what actually allows it to release. So this plug, you can see it's got a groove right here, and then it's got a taper right here where it slides in. So if we do this again, I'll get you guys up here. So we're just going to take this in, and you literally just have to put it in there and push straight in. Listen, clicks right in. Try and pull on it out. Does it come out? All right. All right, I've got it figured out now. So intercooler slats would go, this piece would mount up here normally. This plug here on this harness is for the motor. Where are we at? That motor right there. It's just for the shutters for the intercooler. That's this plug here. So with us not running that, that's not going to be used. This plug here is going to be for your adaptive cruise control sensor. So when I took the bumper off, I had to take that off. I'll show you guys how that goes back on. This guy here is for our blow-off valve. So this is what the blow-off valve is gonna plug into. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna route this harness, let me get you guys fixed here, up along here, because these white tabs are no longer have a place to mount. So I'm gonna tie this up out of the way. We are going to actually go ahead and work on getting the intercooler back in the truck. You are going to reuse this hose here. So you can see here on the intercooler, there's this groove. That's where this little clip is gonna snap into. And you can see at that bottom ring, you can kind of see where it is open. So simply just gonna set this on here like so, and I'm gonna give it a good push down while turning, and you'll feel it kind of a solid pop. I'm gonna leave it right there for right now until, I'm gonna rotate this around, until we get ready to hook this up to that hose right there with that clamp that's laying on the ground right there. Same thing with this harness. I'm gonna wait until I get the intercooler up in there to kind of figure out what makes the most sense. So there's the intercooler, and we are going to go ahead and get this guy up in here. So we are loosely mounted in there. One thing you want to be careful, I don't know if you can see up there, but I want to make sure that grommet goes into that hole up there. There's a lot of play and movement in the top of the intercooler to allow you to do that. All right, so these are 15mm bolts. I'm going to push this guy up, make sure that the grommet is aligned with the hole in the upper intercooler support bracket that's in the truck. I'm gonna run this bolt in. Here you can see that the intercooler is through the bracket on each side. Whoa. See that there? All right, so here's what I've done. This top one, you can see where I have this that clamp and that bolt head, and then this one's gonna be about right here. That way, if I ever need to take these off again, it's gonna be much easier. I'm gonna go ahead and get this one tightened up. All right, so the boots are all the way on. You can see how I oriented the clamp so that they're gonna be much easier to get to next time. And over here, same thing. So, whoops, that upper clamp is right there. And this clip is back in as well. With the intercooler fans, the top grommet goes here on the factory bracket and here as well as these holes at the bottom here. So we are gonna go ahead and get this guy lifted up in here. All right, so what I actually did right there is I went ahead and lightly loosened up each 15 on each side of the lower intercooler mount bracket, and that gave me plenty of room. I needed to get this guy back up in here. All right, so the intercooler is fully installed. There's a hole in this upper flap here where I kind of zip tied the harness up and out of the way. This harness is for the adaptive cruise control, so that will actually route through the bumper when I get that done. But everything is plugged in. Let's fire this thing up and make sure all of our hoses are tight. The rice are inside me. Can't believe how this sounds. Oh, hilarious. Cool. Oh. There it is. CVF front mount intercooler install, stock replacement. Have a good one, guys.